Well, Warpugs, here we are.
Sir, how dare you! Calling out such male enhancement weapons such as the Klingon Disruptor to be ill-suited to gain admiration is one thing I can understand, but the USS Defiant? Sir, you have crossed the line! This was the flagship of Cisco, which devastated the Dominion with such a ridiculous reputation it caused the so-called gods of the Delta Quadrant to question their own supremacy. Yes, this battle-tested machine was the first warship of the Federation. No, sir, Starfleet, the so-called advanced ships of the Dominion can only wish of achieving such feats of warcraft. To mop this icon, I dare say, sir, I would have to question your every claim to be a Feddy-boo. Matter of fact, I might have to report you to the Section 31. You see my joke?
Warpugs, here we are. LazerPig, the USS Defiant sucks. Okay, look. I'm not gonna say he's right. I'm not gonna say he's wrong. But the thing was made of explodium, okay? As is all Federation ships. I have said that the Federation was by far the dumbest, and the worst period when it came to war. They couldn't do jack at war. They were literally falling over themselves in any time where they were at war. The best the Cardassians had was losing to the equivalent of a science ship that barely had any armaments, but yet, like, this is the norm. Like, this is the absolute norm. If you really want to look at it, oh my god, Warpugs. So, every single time the Federation gets involved in a fight, they get trounced hard. And the reason is because they simply don't know what they're doing. I will say it like that. And then they get into a fight that they, can't really do that well at. They can't negotiate their way at or get out of it by just having a sudden aha moment and talking about the deflector ship and the deflector dish and all this other kind of crap. And then we just, nosedive right into the middle of some ridiculous... The Defiant, Warpugs, the Defiant. Literally a bad prototype. I'm not... Like, when the thing is about to shake apart in space trials because it's overpowered, it's just really... And the actual, whatever, power scaling for this thing is all over the place, okay? It's all over the place. And I don't even know really what to say about it at the end of the day. But our glorious Warpig, the glorious one. Is it Warpig? Warpig? I'm an idiot. LazerPig! I'm a moron! Good God! I'm hitting play. All links in the description below. You guys know it. I know it. Let's get into it. The USS Defiant sucks. Let's roll.
Hello, it's that time of the year
Hi.
again. Depression time.
Oh.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.
And because I've been a good boy this year and eaten all my vegetables, Mum says in this video I don't need to deal with tank nerds who make their favorite tank on War Thunder their entire personality, whining about World of Tanks being a Russian game. It's actually Belarusian, while personally funding an oligarch's next mega yacht because if their Mark D Panther doesn't have the exact decal of their big titty Nazi waifu, then
But that's a legitimate complaint, though.
the game is literally unplayable. Anyway, today I get to rant about whatever I want, and
Yay!
I've chosen that most controversial of topic, the starship USS Defiant from the Star Trek franchise, also more popularly known in the Star Trek community as the USS Ben Sisko's motherfucking pimp hand.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Also, because unlike every other Star Trek ship in the galaxy, this ship was built...
Hold on a second. Hold on, where's a button? I need a button. We will call this a button. Muffin button. Yay! Look at these muffins! I have muffins. Hold on. Okay, that was way too humid. They just came out of the oven too, so I am messed up. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Oh, they're
yeah, mine are in a different bag. I'm bringing upstairs. Those are your muffins. There's 6 of them. 3 blueberry, 3 strawberry, vanilla.
See what being a good person gets you? I get muffins.
Don't seal it, let it cool.
Okay. I get muffins. Hooray, let's go. So, yeah, let's roll.
Out with the singular intention of being able to beat the absolute crap out of everything else, in particular, the Borg. The Borg are Star Trek's most ferocious, most well-known, and most overused enemy.
And up until Voyager, they were a threat.
In a perfect world, they are supposed to represent the exact opposite of the Federation. The Federation's primary mission is exploration and peaceful scientific cooperation with any alien species that it meets, all of whom you can put your penis in, especially them.
Dude, not the fish people. Come on, man.
It's a
That was disgusting. That episode was disgusting.
nerd's paradise.
Yes.
The Borg are that perfect enemy. Their existence makes exploration inherently dangerous. You cannot beat them with any known technology. You cannot reason or bargain with them, and anything you throw at them, they'll eventually adapt to. They
Unless you're the USS Voyager.
are vast in number, powerful even in small groups, relentless, and unstoppable. Or at least they're supposed to be. The writers of Star Trek did what all good writers of sci-fi do and inserted a pair of boobs into the Borg.
Of
and then
course.
made it so that every Borg drone was essentially just a mind slave to the whim of this whimsical pair of boobs, which in spite of supposedly being the central creation to an emotionless, relentless, purely logical hive mind, was overly emotional, easily distracted and driven by petty revenge and horniness. The Federation's attempts at dealing with the Borg were a series of very clever schemes, most of which failed because the characters would spend the episode questioning the moral implications of wiping out a species with a singular focus on intergalactic ethnic cleansing. So, while the superior IQ crew of the flagship sneak around trying to find some ethically moral scheme of reasoning with an unreasonable force, Cisco's solution is 4 giant plasma cannons strapped around an engine.
This is
And
true.
I can respect that. The Defiant is the Federation's first ever battleship. Well, in the prime timeline anyway. We're went out for Axonar, boys.
Rest in peace to that. My God. Rest in peace to Axonar, because I'm telling you what, the trailer for Axonar alone was better than half the crap that's come out recently. And I'm not even going to lie. The trailer for Axonar alone was really, really good. And they got some really decent people to play in that. In fact, the guy that played the Vulcan ambassador in Enterprise actually returned to reprise his role for Axonar.
It is built to be small, armored, and have a lot of firepower directed at whatever happens to be in front of it. Now, you might be curious as to how an organization like Starfleet could possibly have survived for so long without ever needing to build a battleship, especially since we are told the Federation has suffered several wars in its history, including with a race that is built almost entirely for war,
Right.
revels in battle, and considers its greatest honor to die in combat. Their phrase for good luck is "today is a good day to die." Yet against them, against an earlier war with a technologically superior foe known for using devices that can make their ships go invisible, and then a later war with a species literally run by a military dictatorship, no one in the Federation ever thought that maybe building a warship would be a good idea.
And then you have to also look at the fact that the Federation ships were so technologically advanced compared to their counterparts that, quite simply put, they were on par with the same ships even though they were built for exploration. It's actually kind of mind-numbing.
Let me explain.
Oh. Fish.
Space!
The final frontier.
Space is big.
Yes.
I mean, it's really, really big.
thick.
I mean, imagine big. Now imagine even bigger.
So we're talking what? Giant ass.
Well, space is bigger than that.
Oh.
Imagine, if you will, you were going for a drive, a long drive, if you will. But it could take you a couple of months, perhaps even a year, to get where you are going, and there might not be anywhere to stop and pee along the way. So you gotta pack everything you need for that journey. And is your 1991 Honda Accord really going to cut it?
No.
I mean, how are you going to fit all the beer you need into the trunk and all the jars you need for piss? And are you really going
Use the bottles, my guy. It's called recycling.
Going to sleep in the back seat every night for a year. Well, not if you still want a spine by the time you get there. Space travel is a bit like that. Even at the ridiculous speeds of warp, getting anywhere takes forever, so having a tiny little ship built for combat isn't going to cut it. You want a place to sleep, you want a place to pee, watch porn, and eat something more interesting than dry ramen and Pop-Tart.
The porn is the best part.
You also need a place to store it all. And what if you need to bring people with you? Well, now you need a bigger ship, more power, more systems, more stuff. And then what if you need to do something when you get there? Well, you need the stuff to do that as well. And then suddenly this is all getting very complicated. And what you eventually end up with is a Jupiter Mining Corporation's flagship, the Solar-class Red Dwarf, a ship 6 miles long with a crew of 11,000, 2,000 decks, 500 of which are just for cargo. And that's only designed to be in space for a couple of years. Anything bigger, we're talking Spaceball 1.
Yeah!
Keep firing, assholes!
They gone to plaid!
Hence why the most common ship in the Star Trek universe is the cruiser. Cruiser has space for everything you need, and everything you might want on a long-ass space voyage that could take several years. Everyone has their own sleeping cabin,
Yay.
a mess hall for eating in,
Yay.
a medic bay, some science labs, this room, whatever that does.
Look, I can't with that first movie.
And of course lots and lots of room for poo, because that's valuable matter and you can't just eject that out into space.
True.
Of course, the original series ships were built with the idea that starships were complicated. You needed a lot of crew doing a lot of things to keep it going. Automation on something as vast and as complicated as a starship was unreliable and prone to goofy hijinks. Much easier to have a lot of people in skirts hand you clipboards.
Yeah.
But Star Trek explored something that most
And the higher the better, my guy.
modern sci-fi and even modern Trek itself tends to shy away from. That is that space is so big and so varied, we may encounter something that to us and our understanding of the universe is simply unexplainable. Something that is beyond our understanding or even our capability to understand.
Hooray.
It might look down on us as if you would look down on a fly that was in your room and you just kept swatting at it, trying to get rid of it, but it keeps buzzing around you. It doesn't matter how many times you try, you just can't get rid of the goddamn thing.
This is why I want to get the Mosquito Personal Defense Array. It costs $2,000. I want to set it up in here for when I open the door and it's so humid outside I could literally swim in it. I want to set it up in here and just observe and watch the little lasers shoot out and blast the little bastards out of the sky.
There is a term for that, which is cosmic horror, sometimes referred to as Lovecraftian horror.
Or 40K.
This idea that all our achievements, even as we enter an age where there is no inequality or hunger or injustice, where we have reached the pinnacle of human civilization and hold hands with countless species as we reach out to explore the stars, that we could be ended by something performing an action which to them would merely be the equivalent of accidentally stepping on a snail.
Yay.
All our achievements, all our history, everything we struggled for and fought for, everything we were, everything we could have been, going completely unrecorded by history and unnoticed by its occupants, ended by something who did not comprehend the full majesty of its actions, nor did it care. Star Trek faces those kinds of horrors. A particular episode that sticks in the mind is a Season 2 episode called When Silence Has Lease. When the Enterprise gets captured by what appears to be a nebula, but is in fact a creature that exists in a gaseous form. Look, special effects on the TV show budget. Like, they did their best, okay?
You gotta cut them some slack. But this is why I don't like the Tau.
Hey, it toys with the minds of those on board, eventually killing one of the crew and threatening to kill half of those on board, not out of malice, but purely out of curiosity of what death is, and its eagerness to observe something it has never encountered before. There are a lot of examples in Star Trek lore that follow this. The Doomsday Machine, the Crystalline Entity, the Q Continuum, etc., etc. But we see the ultimate conclusion of this
John Delancey is the man, though.
And perhaps what is regarded the single greatest episode in Star Trek history, The Inner Light, where an alien probe attacks the mind of Picard and forces him to live a lifetime as an iron worker in a village on a planet that is living out its final years due to their sun about to go supernova. Picard, upon realizing what is happening, is forced to watch his children and his grandchildren grow up in a world where there is no future. The final act is Picard watching the very probe which is forcing him to live through this experience be launched into space. The episode ends with Picard waking back up, and in spite of maybe living 50 years in this life, a total of 25 minutes have passed. And after tracing the probe back to its origin point, they realize the sun in this system went nova over 1,000 years ago. An entire species, a culture, an existence, all of its history, wiped out through no fault of their own. Only the chance that they evolved right at the end of their sun's natural life, with nothing to have ever noticed them left to remain had it not been for this one probe.
There are so many things out there that could do that to us here in just like that, just without even us, you know, in many cases being aware they're about to happen. It's actually kind of unnerving when you sit down and think about how much stuff is out there that could go wrong. And we live on a speck of dust floating in a vast expanse. And compared to the overall whole, if something happened here that was utterly devastating, the rest of the universe wouldn't even notice or care.
Some Star Trek fans still tear up when they hear the music from this episode.
Comfort cat is comfort cat. It's good stuff.
Fans of the game Outer Wilds might sympathize. In an interesting way, we get to see the reverse of this in a Season 1 episode called Home Soil, in which a series of malfunctions aboard a terraforming station lead to the discovery of a life form living within a thin layer of water beneath the sand of the planet, and that by terraforming the planet, they had been accidentally killing this life form. And had that life form not figured out how to take control of the station's equipment, its passing would have gone entirely unnoticed.
Yeah.
This element of knowing the vastness of space and its uncaring nature, and the willingness of humanity to wander into the void without fear, building on its desire to explore and improve themselves as opposed to retreating back into the paranoia, and building on the fear of needing to protect oneself by becoming increasingly militant and hostile like so many other species around it, leads on to, okay, you know what, I know I'm on my 7th tangent here, but hear me.
Dude, continue going on tangents. They're fun.
Yeah. Star Trek Enterprise was a fucking catastrophe of mediocrity. Okay, let me explain Enterprise first, because
Scott Bakula. I will always and forever wonder why Scott Bakula was cast as the captain 100% of the time. Okay?
for a lot of the fans until we get to New Trek, Enterprise has always been that special part of the franchise that carried the most amount of pain for the fans. Enterprise was an ambitious project, coming just a few months after Voyager's satisfying conclusion. It was not the continuation of the Star Trek timeline, but a prequel to it, set 100 years before the original series, in an era before the Federation, where Starfleet was first exploring the galaxy around it.
The series finale of this pissed me off so much I wanted to chew glass.
Fans were excited, And oh boy, did that go wrong. The lessons learned in Voyager was a return to the next generation format was not going to work. Fans were hungry for something more interesting, and the best parts about Voyager and Deep Space Nine were arguably the parts where the consequences for the crew's actions in previous episodes finally caught up with them. However, the biggest issue was, regardless of whatever peril Voyager faced, at the end of the episode, things would be back to normal, and the ship would reappear in the next episode fully repaired with a fresh coat of paint. Seemingly with an infinite supply of shuttles and torpedoes, in spite of the limited quantities of such being such a massive concern at the start of the series. Trust me, fans have written very, very long episodes and discussions about exactly how many shuttles the ship is supposed to carry.
Right.
Complement of 38 photon torpedoes at our disposal, Captain.
And no way to replace them after they're gone.
Ready your photon.
Ready, photons. Fire. Mr. Tuvok?
Ready, Captain.
I have watched this. I know this video. I know this video because I watched this.
Fire.
Shields down to 47%. Load at torpedo bays.
Something the writers addressed when they added in the Delta Flyer, a magical super shuttle that can do whatever the plot requires of it. Enterprise was
Including achieving warp 10, which is basically 0 point speed, meaning it's everywhere at once. So yes, Tom Paris is inside all of us. Let that sink in.
pitched as being the answer to it, a show where the consequences of one episode carried on to the next, where the next episode would begin with the Enterprise still carrying the battle scars of the previous episode, and where the concerns and actions of the crew would have far-reaching series-long consequences. Fans couldn't wait. Instead, what they were given was a watered-down version of the same Next Generation episode in a can. Monster of the Week format delivered with the script-writing talent of a Sci-Fi Channel original series. All the tropes were there. You had Captain America, who would launch into a speech about freedom at the drop of a hat,
And he overacted so much. Oh my god, can Scott Bakula please not overact everything?
so American they dug up an actor who is quite literally a ranch-living cowboy. Former Quantum Leap actor, Golden Globe winner, and amazingly miscast Scott Bakula. Joining him was his southern sidekick who he knows from the south because he won't shut up about it, snarky British dude, token black guy who has about 3 lines in the entire series, comic relief, and of course the women, who are women so are not allowed any personality or personal growth unless they're showing off their midriffs to the camera.
There we go.
Enterprise was a catastrophic failure, devoid of the formula that made its predecessors popular. And when it started to gain traction in its 3rd series, when the writers finally realized that the problem was them all along, it was too little, too late, and the show was cancelled halfway into filming its 4th season, specifically the filming of this episode.
Photon torpedoes. Starfleet can't afford to lose any more ships. Before we can defeat the rebels, we must defeat them.
I really can't stand Scott Bakula.
My only concern is saving the Empire. Destroy them. Understood. What the hell is going on? Destroy them. I've been a soldier all my life.
With the finale
Stop
being
it!
considered the
Stop it! Stop showing that man to me!
biggest slap in the face to the fans, and the final insult in a franchise that should have died the day Jonathan Frakes squeezed his fat ass through the fucking door. But it could have been so different. Earlier ideas for the long-reaching series were rumored to be something more spectacular, a divergent point being Enterprise's first encounter with an alien starship in Episode 3. Captain America makes a speech about humanity, but the ship does not answer. This leads into an investigation murder mystery by the crew, but it is rumored that the original idea was the captain and crew of the ship would cut the speech off halfway through, start laughing, and then fly off with that explanation. The rest of the series would then have the crew of the Enterprise slowly realizing that the galaxy around them, though teeming with life, was largely uncaring and hostile. Each and every faction was out for itself and would take advantage of any display of weakness, leading to Earth and its colonies being attacked and raided by opportunists who later turn out to just be regular people trying to survive in an uncaring galaxy, since the only way to survive is to be tough and be aggressive.
Why didn't they just do it like that to begin with? It would have made much more sense. I would have liked it a lot more. You would have had to explain the Vulcans, yes, but come on, man.
This would have created an interesting dilemma in humanity's attitude.
No, actually, you wouldn't have had to explain the Vulcans. The Vulcans could have just played. You could have played the entire Vulcan storyline out pretty much the same way, with the exception of the Vulcans having some sort of hegemony project going on.
Towards space travel. Do we continue to push our narrative of goodwill and peaceful cooperation, knowing no one will ever take us seriously, and others would only see that as a weakness to exploit? Or do we follow the example of everyone else and forge a powerful, militaristic empire, bringing those around us to heel and showing the galaxy that humanity is not to be fucked with?
Yeah!
This is where the timeline split of the Federation of the Prime Timeline and the Terran Empire of the Mirror Universe would take place, in such a way that somewhat mirrors the United States' own character growth as a country at the end of the Bush era. Do we do as Kissinger wanted by taking random countries around the world and decimating them so badly it becomes an example of why you don't mess with the USA anytime there is a problem? Or do we realize that such actions only lead to further hostility and you can't fight everyone all of the time? Something they are still learning, but they'll work it out. It only took the British Empire 230 years to work that one out, so, give them time. So,
True.
anyway, Enterprise could have been glorious. Instead, it sucks bigger balls than that guy who had sex with that horse and died. I forget his name, but Mr.
What question you ever claimed to be a Fibby-Boo?
Damn it.
Weapons such as the Klingon disruptor to be
I did not need to be reminded that that video exists.
Supposed to be ranting about the Defiant. Okay, so unlike Star Wars, where everyone's an asshole, but the good guys have cool laser swords.
Accurate, actually.
Star Trek embraces the idea that when they fly out into space, they could meet a creature that has powers equivalent to that of a god. And that isn't anything unusual. That's just Tuesday. So how do you build a ship that is capable of existing in a universe like that? In Star Wars, the backbone of the Imperial Navy is the Star Destroyer. The Star Destroyer has a simple function. It is designed to be able to fire all of its guns forward. It is a big, powerful ship. Sure, it has hangars, it has medical bays, and even science labs, but its main function is to show up and kick ass. It is built to take on any other ship it could reasonably be expected to encounter and win. But beyond that, its functionality is rather limited. I mean, you couldn't send a Star Destroyer to colonize a planet, or build an outpost, or
Lot of dudes. Literal meat wagon.
evacuate one, or help cure a plague. I mean, the Imperials prefer to use much more specialized ships for that sort of thing. Okay, I can hear you typing in the comments that Star Destroyers can absolutely do all of those things. Listen, Sweaty, you want to explain to me why the Imperials were running around with about 40,000 different variants of every ship ever made?
Because Star Wars, the Empire was a bunch of morons.
That are people, serious professionals, with 1,000-mile stares accurately cataloguing and recording every single TIE fighter variant in existence, of which there are currently about 50, and some proclaim to be even more, depending on if or not you count things like TIE walkers and TIE tanks as TIE fighters.
That's
yes,
so
those
dumb.
exist, and yes, they're as dumb as they look. You don't need to do that if you have a functional do-everything ship as the backbone of your navy. The Imperials can only dream to match the practicality of the Acclamator. Just saying. But whatever, regardless. The Imperials can get away with this because they have the resources of a galaxy, and everything in that galaxy exists in a way they can understand. The most powerful ships are still vulnerable to turbo lasers, the space wizards can still be killed with regular guns, and travel time between major systems is calculated in days, not centuries.
Yay.
So if they need a specialized ship, one can normally always be made available. The Federation doesn't have that luxury. The ships in Star Trek are expected to be able to operate alone, often for years at a time, and essentially need to do whatever needs to be done without support.
One of the prime examples of this is the people talk about the Galaxy class as and the Voyager class, things like that. One of the first classes of ship that was capable of doing this was the Ambassador class. It was the first one that was really set up for that, where it could go for extended periods of time without stopping.
Build stuff, mine stuff, launch probes, do science.
I like science.
Yeah!
Fight pirates.
Yeah, Mr. White, science!
Transport huge quantities of stuff around, host delegations, set up minefields, close rifts in space-time. A Federation ship can basically do it all, and when needs be, it can kick the absolute ass out of anything. Though Star Wars fans have always envisioned the technology gap between the two series would always favor the Star Wars factions, the ships in Star Trek are ungodly powerful. Like, these things can, and have, killed gods. The big brain boys of Warhammer 40k might think it's the pinnacle of badassery to strap thousands of cannons to cathedrals and fly them through hell, but that is nothing compared
I disagree.
to the power of one Galaxy-class starship, whose phased plasma weapons can reignite the sun. There are no X-Wing-like fighter ships in Star Trek, with but a few exceptions like these Peregrine fighters, which are the size of a passenger jet and were originally built as postal vans, because if you don't have something capable of matching that power, you're basically fucked. And to
Pretty
put that in
much.
perspective, the Romulan B-class warbird known as the Daenerys is over 1,000 meters in length and is powered by a miniature black hole. And that is still not the most powerful ship in the canon. Hi, it's post-production LazerPig here.
Hi.
I'm just going to get this out of the way now because I can hear the comments in my sleep. Yes, there are X-Wing-like little fighters in Star Trek. In fact, some of the more eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed in some of the footage of Star Trek Online I'm playing in the background, my ship of choice is the Atlas Dreadnought, which has the function that allows you to launch little tiny fighter shuttles. Look, the relationship Star Trek has to fighters like this is complicated and
Very
never explained in
complicated.
the best of detail. Sometimes they just show up because, well, it's sci-fi, and sci-fi has to have little fighter aircraft firing little lasers because, well, that's what they taught me at media management school. Are you not satisfied, nerds?
No.
I mean, yes, okay, it doesn't make sense in Star Trek because, well, battles in Star Wars are based on Air Force battles, so you have carriers, and you have fighters and bombers and big battleships firing at long range, and Star Trek battles are closer to naval warfare. And this would be like a scene in Master and Commander where Russell Crowe orders the launch of a number of tiny little rowboats with little cannons strapped to the front.
Which would be hilarious. I just have to say it would be absolutely goddamn hilarious if that happened.
Hilarious, but not exactly practical. Fighters really shouldn't exist in Star Trek, but like everything, when the writer demands it, they show up, and somehow are practical to use versus something which can one-shot a frigate with pinpoint accuracy. Like, this kind of stuff is just going to happen in Star Trek lore, and you just kind of have to roll with it. The Federation exists in a galaxy where they are frequently expected to have to fight gods, and can do it in a ship that also contains a swimming pool, luxury apartments for all the crew, and can fire beams of polarized energy that can disrupt space-time. And they can do it without being a whiny bitch about it. The reason the Federation has never built a battleship is quite simply, they've never needed to. Typical Federation cruiser with all its luxuries intact can go toe-to-toe with some of the Alpha Quadrant's most powerful warships, and since cost isn't really a factor, there has never been a requirement to remove those luxuries. In fact, over time, there has been a bigger reason to keep adding them.
The sheer fact of the matter is, every single opponent that Starfleet has faced, every single damn one of them, has been so far beneath them technologically, it's actually kind of pathetic.
Original series ships were built largely without automation. They're crowded, but that's okay. Having a big crew is pretty beneficial. The Constitution is expected to take damage and deal with it. It has backups to backups and backups to those backups. It's pretty rugged as starships go, and that massive crew can be turned to damage control and effectively repair most ship functions on the fly and keep her in the fight. The next evolution of ships is the Excelsior. Okay, things are a bit more stylish now, but everything is basically the same. Excelsiors are functional to a T. There's almost nothing that can really go wrong with them that cannot be fixed by a couple of guys in a spanner, or by taking the computer chips out and turning them around.
Yeah!
But this This is where Starfleet hits a snag. See, they're visiting countless worlds, many of whom have never met an alien species before, and they are trying to fly the flag of peace. We are the Federation, they say, a big collective of alien species who work together in peace and harmony. We're not here to conquer and destroy. In fact, we always look for the more peaceful solution. Let me show you our ship. And then they bring you on board this incredibly heavily armed starship with its narrow corridors and its military-like crew barracks and its multiple bulkheads and defensive systems and its heavily armed crew, all wearing matching stuffy bright red British imperialist cardigans.
Hooray!
You think, well, this kind of looks like a warship. And you say you come in peace? So the next evolution takes a step away from that, and we get the Ambassador class.
Yay.
Much larger, equally as powerful, but now the corridors are large and plush. There's nice carpets, decorated meeting rooms, bars and lounges with comfortable sofas. It feels more like a flying hotel than a battleship, so you feel more at ease, more comfortable. It lures you in with that soft-looking interior, but if you fuck with it, God cannot help you. While not the final evolution in this, the Galaxy class is really the last in that line that sort of takes that ideology to heart. The Galaxy class is built to be in space for decades without support, and since you are also expected to be on that ship for potentially years, you take your family with you, and you can happily live your entire life on board. It has parks, a school, bars, even apparently an aquarium, a small zoo, as well as several magic rooms that can recreate any sex fantasy you want.
Don't even think for a second that's not exactly what the holodecks are used for. Don't think for a half-quarter second period this is not exactly what the holodecks are used for.
Computer, generate 80-foot tall version of Daisy Ridley circa 2019 with a full bladder. Generate lawn chair and a set of goggles. Increase my olfactory sense by 5,000%. Disengage safety protocols and run program.
You know this what they were used for. And I feel sorry for the poor bastard that had to clean up in thereafter.
It can fire a beam with the power of a supernova onto a postage stamp 186,000 miles away. Dear Christ. Civilizations which have threatened the Federation typically fall into two categories. Ones that can match the Federation in terms of raw firepower, in which point they have been basically beaten into a stalemate, and the ones that can't. And those only exist because the Federation prefers the peaceful solution. And after seeing half your forces wiped out by a man sipping tea on what is effectively a cruise ship, you're pretty much happy to accept whatever terms the Federation throw at you.
Right.
Even those in the technical rare third category that once had the Federation almost beat, like the Dominion, were eventually beaten back. Because the gods intervened. Because they know better. The sheer size of the Dominion fleet and its capability to replace losses at a rapid rate forced the Federation to push in older models of starship with disastrous effects. When the Dominion encountered the larger, more powerful...
I will say this, some of the battle scenes in DS9 were some of the, like for me, because I had grown up with Trek, when... like, literally, that Defiant class gets blasted in half. I was just sitting there looking at the screen like, oh my god.
Ships, they operated just to ram them. But even with better technology, more powerful starships, and endless waves of clone troopers built entirely for war and controlled by a race of shape-shifting, hyper-intelligent beings, was no match for the power of friendship. And when the Federation befriends a group of omnipotent beings that magic away half your armada, it might be time to reconsider your options.
There are no options at that point. You are hosed. The gods have decided that you are not worthy. And to be quite honest with you, they weren't talking to anybody but the Cisco. The Cisco knows all.
This brings us back to the Borg. The Borg's main strength is not hyper-powerful warships or an infinite waves of mooks to do their bidding, though they do have both. It is the fact that they can adapt to whatever weapons you fire at them. And not just adapt, but basically become immune to. Let's not kid ourselves here. That one ability is what makes them basically indestructible. Without it, the Federation would be fighting fish in a barrel. The first time the Federation encounter the Borg, the Enterprise basically kicks the ever-loving crap out of them before they become immune to their weapons, and their ship self-repairs. If it hadn't done that, Picard would have bitch-slapped them aside on his way to order another tea Earl Grey hot. But for the first time in the Federation's history, they now had to deal with a being that they couldn't physically stop with weapons or negotiate with. And this is my major problem with the Defiant. In modern war, the idea of the jack-of-all-trades equipment has taken prevalence over the master of one, because survival on a battlefield and war in general depends on not any one factor, but the ability to change and adapt to the situation around you.
Versatility is literal king now of the battlefield. That's why you see so many aircraft designs and ship designs right now taking on this kind of tact. Yeah.
There is strength in being able to rapidly change tactics and learn from your mistakes. The Federation doesn't do any of that, to the point where I'm starting to question the intelligence of the Federation as a whole.
Yeah.
Generations of peace-loving bureaucrats have made them effectively bad at war. They have an enemy that are immune to guns, so their solution is more guns.
More
Seriously.
DACA.
Out of the 4 ship classes built to take on the Borg, what are any of them doing differently from a regular Federation starship that would benefit in a fight with the Borg? The Borg are immune to energy weapons and can move through shields as if they aren't there. So if you were in charge of an anti-Borg ship, why would you equip everyone with phaser pistols and use shields as your primary defense? You know what would be better? A door. Just a big-ass door. The Borg
I can't argue with that. That's fucking accurate.
proven to be incapable of adapting to melee and projectile weapons. Everyone on that ship should be armed with at least a knife. You know what? Give everyone a spear and a shield and teach them how to form a phalanx. The Borg with their zombie-ass walk isn't getting through that anytime soon. Get rid of your shields, replace it with armor. Cover the hull in mass diver and railguns. The Borg cannot adapt to solid projectile weapons. You have the goddamn power to physically replicate armor onto the ship. There's an episode of Deep Space Nine where they prove they have a projectile weapon, where the projectile teleports instantly into the brain of the target. You are able to shoot people through frickin' walls?
I'm just saying, the Federation sucks at warfare. They are utterly dog water at it.
And yet, when it comes to fighting the Borg, all of this technology is just miraculously forgotten. What are these ships doing that any other ship of the Starfleet Armada is not also capable of doing, and better? The answer:
nothing.
Nothing!
Nothing!
The Steamrunner, Norway, and Akira are beautiful ships, in my opinion. Especially the Steamrunner.
It's thick.
I don't know why, but so ugly yet beautiful, and I just wanna grab it. But these are just the Galaxy class in a smaller package, and if a Galaxy class cannot fight the Borg, what exactly is the Norway supposed to do? Then there's the Sovereign, which is basically the Galaxy class turned up to 11. It's the next evolution in the Starfleet ship design, and again, it features all the luxuries and capabilities of a Galaxy class with more DACA. And when I say more DACA, I mean the supernova death beams are a little more powerful, and it can rapid-fire quantum torpedoes. What's a quantum torpedo? Well, it's a photon torpedo, but it's blue. The Sovereign class and a fleet of starships, which included the aforementioned anti-Borg ships, show up to beat the ever-loving crap out of a single Borg cube and prove to be utterly useless.
See, here's the fun part about this too. Every single time that you see the Borg in like Voyager, they're using dozens, if not hundreds of cubes to take on species that are nowhere near the power and scale of the Federation. One cube both times.
Only saved when Picard points everyone to a weak spot on the cube that he didn't think about telling anyone before. Maybe, I don't know, that was vital important information, but no! That leaves one last ship in our lineup. What the hell were you thinking, anti-Borg ships? The Defiant. Oh boy. So the Defiant is Starfleet's first dedicated battleship. It has one purpose: fight things. Mostly the Borg.
Yep.
And what does it do over all these other ships? What new weapon is it bringing to the battlefield? What
phase cannons.
Fantastic new ability does it bring over every other ship? Fucking nothing!
Never mind. I thought phase cannons were a thing, but apparently not. Yeah.
Well, that's not true. It does a lot of things differently.
Okay.
But the way it does... Okay. I talk a lot about bad designs on this channel, and usually I can come up with some kind of excuse as to why they're like that, be it lack of funding, available materials, or just the regime in charge making the wrong decisions when it...
About everything?
...comes to what a future war might look like. But with the...
Everything.
Defiant, I am adding a new category.
Okay.
Sheer incompetence.
Sweet!
Because the major issue I have with the Defiant is its design and its reasons for existing in the first place. If the Defiant were a gun being built by a modern army, it would be a blunderbuss with a 12 times magnification scope designed to operate underwater to fight the Taliban. If it were a tank, it would be a multi-turreted monstrosity armed entirely with anti-air guns, where the crew has to actively step out of the tank in order to get it to reload. And who would design a thing like that? In short, it's bad. But how bad? Come with me on an adventure.
Yay!
Fun will now commence.
So first we need to explain, why does this thing exist? I mean, well, it exists to fight the Borg. I mean, it can't do it because the Federation design team in charge of building the new generation of anti-Borg combat ships has the combined IQ of a beef sandwich. And they couldn't get it to work anyway, so into mothball it goes.
Yay!
So why did they bring it out of mothball?
Because Cisco's a boss.
Is it to fight the Borg? No. It's for this.
Our mission is to take the Defiant into the Gamma Quadrant and try to find the leaders of the Dominion, the founders. We have to convince them that the Federation does not represent a threat to them.
The Dominion War, the entire lead up to it, every action taken, all across the board, was the Federation literally throwing its dick on the table and daring anybody to do anything about it, and then the Dominion did something about it. The sheer amount of arrogance displayed by Starfleet was incredible. And when I was sitting there watching the series for the first time, I was like, oh my god, they're invading their space, disrespecting their borders, actively trying to subvert their government, everything else like that. I understand it's an evil space empire, but what did you expect they were going to do?
So let me get this straight. Actually, hang on. I have a prop here. Hang on a minute.
Go for it.
So let me get this right. Your plan is to approach a hostile, militaristic, paranoid, galactic empire, and to prove that you are not a threat to them, you show up on their secret homeworld with a heavily armed warship. Sorry, not just a heavily armed warship. The single most powerful warship the Federation has ever built, brought out of mothballs specifically for this purpose, and fitted with a cloaking device so it cannot be detected as it flies towards the one planet housing all your military leaders with enough firepower to level a city.
Remember what I just said about the Federation provoking this crap? Do you remember what I just got out of my mouth? The Federation provoked the Dominion War from start to the first shot. And yeah, the Dominion was doing stuff, but who were the baddies? Just a question.
And you're telling me that you are completely sane?
No.
I'm sorry, this flies in the face of all the established logic of ship progression that I've just spent the past half hour explaining to you. The Excelsior is an intimidating battleship-like design which hampered negotiations of peaceful coexistence with other races because, well, you can't negotiate on board a battleship and not feel intimidated.
Right.
So ship design starts to take away from that. You make people feel comfortable. If you want to make friends, you take them to a fancy hotel with fruity drinks that have weird names, not the dining hall of a submarine surrounded by armed guards. And for some reason, Cisco, the person considered not only the most badass, but one of the greatest captains in the canon by fans, decided to bring the peace delegation on board an even smaller, even more powerful, even more intimidating warship. And rather than throw spoons at him like the Federation should have, they agreed? What was going on that day?
Where was Picard? I got a feeling Picard could have averted the whole Dominion War in like 20 minutes. Where the hell was he?
Was this like the last point in a meeting that had been dragging on all day, and now it was like almost 5 o'clock and all the donuts had gone stale and everyone just wants to go home, and the last guy stands up and says, "Oh, before we all leave this gigantic militaristic empire with thousands of warships and clone soldiers of which all are leagues more powerful than our own, should we try and intimidate them?" And everyone just went, yeah, that'll work. To put that in perspective for you, that is like North Korea showing up suddenly in Washington Harbor with one of their old-ass Soviet submarines demanding we agree to peace terms. Do you honestly think that is going to work? What were they thinking?
Also, some design flaws cropped up during the ship's shakedown cruise, so Starfleet decided to abandon the project.
Disruptor to be of this. God, damn it. But the Federation! No, sir! Starfleet! The so-called advanced warp. Shit! Fuck! Called advanced ships of the Dominion can only wish of achieving. Fuck!
Now, before we begin, I should address the elephant in the room. How big is the Defiant? This may seem like a simple answer, but the reality is, we just don't know.
It was supposed to initially have been the size of the Galaxy Cruiser's saucer section. Then it got smaller. Then it got larger. Then it got smaller. Then it got larger.
The Defiant is a ship which has the not unique problem of constantly changing size throughout the show. In some episodes, and even that one movie, it has appeared to be about at least 50 meters in length, but in some other episodes, it's about 170. But the official plans claim it to be 120. But if we look at those plans which appeared in the show, and using reference points that we find here, such as the shuttle, which we know to be about 3.3 meters high, we can assume each deck is about 3.5 meters high, giving us a total length of 110 meters. But then we see characters use these corridors in the show, and you can tell based on the height of them that each corridor is only about 2.5 meters tall, meaning the shuttle can't fit here.
Yay!
It's also supposed to have 5 decks, but the plans only show 4. Look, it's a mess, okay?
Yeah,
so I'm using the David Schmidt plans, because these are apparently the closest things we have to an official blueprint. Now, I'm not getting into the argument of how big the Defiant is, because yes, I know using the David Schmidt plans means I have to accept the Defiant is 120 meters long, which means this hatch is not big enough for that shuttle to fit through, but I have other problems with the shuttle bay.
Okay.
We'll get into it.
Let's go.
Now, in the interest of fairness, I've decided to compare the Defiant's design philosophy to that of a modern warship, and the warship I have chosen is the USS Iowa from the Second World War.
Sweet!
You may question why I've decided this ship specifically, and
No.
that's because I think it's funny. Regardless of all the major and obvious differences between the two, the Iowa is a ship of war. It's not the greatest battleship ever built, sorry Iowa fans, but it was one of the best battleships the Americans ever fielded, and as far as World War II battleship designs go, it's pretty damn good. It incorporates a lot of what you'd expect in the design of a battleship, and it's built on the experiences of naval combat, not just from the American perspective, but from other ideas incorporated into the battleships of other nations as the philosophy of naval warfare changed. It remains one of the best examples of the solutions brought about to combat the challenges of naval warfare of the period, and given how so much of Star Trek is based on US naval standards and traditions, I thought it an apt ship to compare it to. It also
And it's sexy as fuck, too. I'm just saying.
means I get to use this clip.
Yeah!
With that in mind, I want to talk about bunk beds.
What?
Only the most exciting things on this channel. Bunk beds. 2 beds stacked on top of each other.
Right.
Sometimes more. The Iowa makes use of them because, well, space is a luxury. And
okay,
this is the most efficient way of utilizing what little space there is to make sure everyone gets a bed. You can't afford.
Okay, so this right here has not changed that much. This has not changed that much. So I slept in something very, very similar to this on board a Ticonderoga cruiser, okay? This has not changed at all for the most part. The thing right here, this light is it's the nose breaker, because if you inevitably wake up because you feel like you're falling because you're in heavy seas and your body's literally dropping about 30 to 60 feet, you're going to wake up because you feel like you're falling, you're going to jerk up, and you're going to slam your bridge of your nose right onto this light. You have fun with that. The straps on the sides here, they are strapped up and locked in these places, and that is prevents you from flying out of your sleep when you're asleep and flying out of this thing and onto the deck floor below when the seas suck. And if you're in the North Atlantic, the seas suck!
Or to give everyone their own cabin, so this is typically something reserved for the upper officers. So on the Iowa, they employ what's called a hot bunk system. No one has an assigned bunk.
God, no.
Everyone just takes turns on whatever bed is available between shifts. Well, okay, that's not quite true. Some people do have assigned bunks, but like one bunk will be assigned to like 3 different people who will kind of share it on a rota. But we're getting into it. We've seen the Federation do something similar. The Excelsior has a bunk system. The Enterprise A has a bunk system. The Defiant, a ship where we are told space is an absolute premium, where the design philosophy was to strip out all non-essentials and make it as small as possible, has private quarters for all the crew. Okay, that's not technically true. Everyone has to share a room with someone else, and the rooms are small, and these are technically bunk beds.
Bunk beds?
Yes, I get it. But this is not the point. We'll
Right.
get to that in a second.
Okay.
Firstly, what's this? Well, it's a workstation for some reason, I guess for like personal things like sending messages home and things. I don't know why you'd allow your crew to do this, since allowing everyone on board to send a constant stream of unmonitored calls home sounds like an easy way to give your ship's position away, but what do I know?
Who cares? Who cares? Remember, it's the Federation. When's the last time they were sufficiently challenged? They don't know what they're doing. They just don't know what the hell they're doing.
I'm more concerned, why do these rooms exist in the first place? Okay, I understand some officers on board ships, like the Iowa, might have something like this, but these bunks are for the officers.
Right.
The bunks on the Defiant are not just for the officers, they're for everyone on the goddamn ship! In fact, there's more than what the ship needs. It has a complement of 50. How many bunks does it have? 65!
Yay!
Assuming the captain is the only officer who doesn't have to share. So
Oh, and the fun part about it is that little nose cone can be shot off like a missile. That's not a joke. They can actually shoot the front part off like a missile, apparently. That was part of the original design. I'm not making this up.
Not only do we have 15 extra bunks that we don't need, oh, by the way, the ship can apparently fit an extra 100 people on board, you know, for emergency evacuations.
You can fit at least 5,000 people on board that damn ship. If you ever transported crew, it's air conditioned and it has carpet. It's a paradise for troops. Let's go.
How? But look, Starfleet crews work on 3 shift rotations. There are 16 crew members active and on duty at any one time. 16 are on standby, and 16 are presumably asleep. If we had a hot bunk system, we could knock 65 bunks down to about 20 and save so much space. And guess what we could do with all that space? More weapons, more power, more space for torpedo batteries. Like, I know I'm going on about this, but this just annoys me. Okay, okay, it's another issue we'll get onto later. later, because as fun as it would be to rant about the Defiant's completely baffling and inefficient use of internal space, this corridor here, this one, this pisses me off. See these things? They're escape pods, 2 on each side, but there's no way to get from this side here to that side over there. So if the abandoned ship order rings out and you go this way, but everyone else also went this way, which is a thing that can happen when everyone's in a blind panic and you've got explosions going off around you and you've got like less than 10 seconds to get to jump into a pod, and then you get here, these pods are full, so you have to double back, go all the way back down here, back through the bridge and then up this corridor. Why did you do this? Why did you just put a corridor right there? It gets worse. Because if you're in the engineering section, you have to run to the opposite end of the 120-meter long starship through medical. Medical, which is presumably trying to evacuate people in stretchers who would be going the opposite way to the shuttle bay.
Yay!
Can you maybe see why that would be a problem? Does health and safety risk assessment forms not exist in the Star Trek universe? Obviously not, considering engineering is built over 3 floors, and due to the limits of space, the only way to move between floors is this ladder. This one ladder. Fantastic. Disregarding that in the show we see ships under fire all the time. It causes explosions. It causes the ship to rock around violently. And you're telling me the only way of getting around probably the most important room on the ship, the one room which typically requires the most amount of attention from damage control teams, is this one flimsy ass ladder. You fall off that thing, instant death. You never heard of one of these? You know what that does? It stops people falling off ladders. Star Wars has it. You know what the Iowa had? Stairs.
Yes.
Stairs with railings.
And also the decapitation hatch.
Railings people could grab onto to stop themselves falling over, because guess what? The ocean is not flat. And ships tend to do this thing where they rock about the place. And that makes moving around kind of tricky sometimes.
Little bit.
I praise the Iowa for having such innovation, but here's a picture from a replica 12th century medieval carrack. Do we notice something? Hey, you know warp nacelles? These highly unstable, quite explosive things that leak plasma everywhere if they get damaged, that we keep on big long pylons really far away from the rest of the ship, so that when the inevitable happens, it doesn't, set the ship on fire or melt the skin off the crew. Yeah, let's put them right next to the hull. In fact, let's put them inside the hull.
Do it.
I think there's maybe some safety concerns. I mean, this is a combat ship. Its job is to be under fire. It's going to take damage. These things are going to be damaged. Oh, it's fine. We've also strapped all the weapons to them. Hi, USS Iowa. We really love the design of your warship, but just to increase efficiency, we've decided to put the fuel tanks right next to the ammunition storage and strap them to either side of the hull. It's fine, we've armored them.
Yay!
It gets worse. This bit at the front? Now, some claim that's a launchable warhead, which I have my own thoughts about, because there's no way Starfleet would be that stupid. They are that stupid.
They are that stupid.
Hey, Iowa! We've decided you don't have enough firepower, so we've strapped this comedically large cruise missile to your bow. Also, we've put all your radar components and spare binoculars in the missile.
Yep.
What could possibly go wrong? Yes,
Nothing.
This is a detachable warhead, which also contains all the sensor equipment for the ship. Because why wouldn't it? If you think I'm lying, it carries several antimatter warheads inside and an entire torpedo battery. The ship has 2 other torpedo batteries quite sensibly located on the rear side, which utilizes this little trolley rail system to bring the torpedoes forward, which, avoids things like the magazines being in an exposed position, because obviously this is an attack ship and all the guns are positioned forward. So if it's going to be attacking something, it's going to have its front facing the enemy. So by that logic, and feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong, but that front bit is probably the bit that's going to be taking all the damage.
Right.
So why would you put a massive explosive right on the front? Hey, Iowa, we've decided you're just not exciting enough, so we've just made the front part of your ship a gigantic bomb. Now, don't worry, it comes off, and you shoot the front part of it at your enemy. Yes, that bit has all your sensor and radar equipment, and yes, there's some risk to keeping a fuckload of explosive in your bow, but we think it'd be really cool.
Don't worry about it. You're just head-onning everything.
What's that? You don't think it's a good idea? Well, don't worry, because we've also put all your rangefinder equipment in there, too.
You know what? This is what happens when you let the Bureau of Ordnance build shit.
That's right. This warhead also contains the targeting array for all the weapons. If you lose this, not only can the Defiant not see, it also cannot fire its guns. What could go wrong? Oh, it's also an escape pod, by the way.
Oh.
I'm not making that up. It has its own thrusters, it has its own crew compartments, enough emergency supplies for months. It's even got its own little bridge. It's also filled with fucking explosive!
When you want to have a Galaxy-class ship with all the amenities, but you can't. Sometimes you have to put a bed in a bomb.
And they put it right on the front of the ship! The bit most likely to get shot at! And you are expected, in the case of an emergency when you have to abandon ship, to take shelter in the magazine!
Yay!
One solid penetrating smack to that frontal plate, and this whole thing goes up like the 4th of July. Who designed this? I think I understand what happened here.
Go for it. Oh,
So this
God.
detachable bit at the front, yeah? Big escape pod? No. Warhead filled with explosives.
Yeah.
What do you think, John Starfleet?
Do you want some fucking cocaine?
I'm so glad they never used this in the show because, you know what, now we can just ignore that this thing exists. And I'm going to rewrite it here, okay? Screw it. You see this bit? It contains all the sensor equipment. It needs to be on the front of the ship, so we've armored it, but we know that's never enough, and since we expect it to take a lot of damage, it is detachable, so you can just quickly swap it out for another one when you get back to Starbase. Can we all agree that's better?
That's better.
Can we all agree that that's the thing now?
That's much better. That's actually very succinct, and I like it. I can appreciate that.
Apparently we can just arbitrarily rewrite established 60-year-old canon on the fly now. How much clout do I need in the Star Trek community before I can overrule the living embodiment of a bad Thunderbirds puppet? We all good? We happy? Good.
Yeah.
The Defiant doesn't have any toilets. Also, can we please talk about the shuttle bay? Okay, the Defiant is small. It's built as a short-range combat ship, but it can land on a planet's surface and supposedly has landing struts. They're not on the plans. But
Why?
they exist somehow. So, why does it need shuttles? Well, people give me all sorts of answers, so much so that Google's definitely an AI, not just repeating whatever the first result says back at you system gives me a list of them, none of which are particularly convincing outside of that one rare scenario where you have to transfer something or someone, and the Defiant just can't directly dock at, land at, or teleport you there. In which case, I'd see why you'd need a shuttle. One shuttle. Not 3 of them, built into this neat little row, meaning you have to launch them one at a time. Sorry, did I say 3? I meant 4. Plus the 2 worker bees.
Good news.
Now the bees, great idea. These exist to facilitate emergency repairs on the exterior. This is a combat ship. Getting damage is expected. So having a couple of these on board, fantastic idea. But then there is this surprise 4th shuttle down here. That just kind of juts awkwardly out the side. Actually, that's perfect. Why can't you just have that? Have a nice little shuttle tucked away, very efficient, very useful, instead of taking up almost your entire eternal space with this elaborate chain launch system for 3 shuttles you don't need and never use.
Okay.
Alright, I think they use them once. Take that space, make the med bay bigger. You know, big starships get away with having small med bays because they basically only have to deal with general day-to-day health issues. If you need more space, you have the option of turning one of the cargo bays into a triage center.
This is what happened in several episodes. They triage several places.
Defiant doesn't have a cargo bay. You do not have that option. You're also dealing with combat wounds. Why do you only have 3 beds and half your space is taken up with a lab? You know, the labs that you're not supposed to have?
The medical database is practically non-existent. I've downloaded as many of my files from the station as I can, but this ship simply wasn't designed to handle many casualties.
And for all this inconvenience,
a combat ship not designed to be able to handle casualties. Oh dear.
For all this stripping out of the luxury of being able to handle more than 3 light casualties at once, the flagrant breach of OSHA regulations, and the questionable placement of the magazines, which really should be in the center where the shuttle bay is, as it's the most armored part of the ship. Yet another reason to get rid of it. For all the joys of having a ship that can sleep 65, and a mess hall that can only feed 16, a transporter room as big as the med bay, and a massive bomb strapped to your front, of which behind conveniently sits your shield generator and the machine which keeps your ship from falling apart, you get a tiny, expensive, incredibly impractical fighter ship that is not only resource intensive to maintain and an absolute maintenance nightmare, but comes with the benefit of having enough firepower to equal that of an upgraded Excelsior class.
Hooray.
Look, I could go on about this all day. But I have a limited amount of time and this video is getting long enough as it is. The Defiant is one of the most beloved ships in the Star Trek fandom.
True.
Thanks to New Trek's utter obsession with Kirk and general lack of knowledge on anything about Star Trek outside of the common Kirk tropes, the Defiant and Deep Space Nine remain untouched by the likes of people like Kurtzman, mostly because the plots of the episodes are too complicated for him to understand.
Right.
But in our haste to worship this tough little ship, I think we're overlooking the obvious problems. The problems being that it was designed by a team of brain-dead monkeys high on ketamine and ractogena. I'm not saying I could design a better ship, but poor use of space, blatant OSHA violations, wacky concepts dreamed up in a cocaine fever dream, and a complete failure to understand what a battleship even does, combined with being utterly useless at its one design task, and even more useless at the task it was actually used for. If the Defiant didn't have the benefit from being shrouded in plot armor, I'd say you'd be safer in Starbug.
Ooh.
So at this point, people are like, LazerPig, you're so sexy and brilliant, have children with me. I'm joking, I'm overweight and went prematurely bald at 16. What they actually say is, well, Mr. So-called Laser, so-called Pig, if that's your actual name, it's not, it's Malcolm. How would you design such a ship if you're so brilliant? Even though I just said I couldn't design a better ship, let's give it a try.
Go for it.
Why the fuck not?
Why the fuck not? Let's go.
Yes, I know nerds tend to use the Nebula excuse to wave off the Defiant's many flaws. Oh, it's built for multi-mission so it can adapt and shut up. That is the exact problem. It was built as a short-range, single-mission combat ship, but it was designed like a starship. Like the Federation design team, when designing it, started with everything they thought a starship should have. Cabins, shuttle bays, mess holes, etc., etc., and then removed all the things they thought it didn't need, or science labs, and families, and luxury things, because it's a combat ship, guys. But they've kept all this added bloat weight because, in their mind, for some reason, it still has to be a functioning starship. It still has to fulfill that multi-mission role in case this single-mission ship needs to do something else other than blow up whatever's in front of it. Oh, it needs to have 65 cabins in case it needs to take on extra crew. To do
He beat me to it.
what? The reality is, we're approaching the problem the wrong way. Why does the Defiant need to be a starship? Okay, this might be a stretch here. During the First World War, submarines did not have bunks, or mess halls, or days of food and water on board. They operated in large packs and would have a tender vessel nearby which would supply them with everything they needed, but also provide space for the crew during their downtimes. And now it might be a bit of a stretch to push the Defiant's concept this far, but in my opinion, a similar idea would work better for it.
I think he's
starship with nothing on it outside of as much armor and as much weapons as you can cram onto it, designed to operate in packs, and all serviced by a much larger carrier vessel which could not only service and refuel and rearm and repair those vessels, but supply everything the crew needs when not in combat. And it can have science labs and big quarters and fancy whatevers and families, I don't care. Of course Starfleet already has a ship like that. It's called the Saber, which I would put forward as an overall better designed ship, with the problem it also has shuttle bays. Take those off, put more cannons on it, job done. But of course,
that is a really nice looking ship, to be quite honest with you. It is a very, very nice looking ship.
Of course, that's all good and well if you look at the Star Trek universe in terms of how an actual military would function. Star Trek is not a real-world military, it's a TV show. And TV shows require a different form of logic. Season 1 of Deep Space Nine was a risk. It is a concept that took a serious diversion away from the next generation and received a lot of complaints because of it.
Yeah.
Fans during those early days argued that this wasn't Star Trek. We had a wormhole open up and an entire new section of the galaxy to explore, and rather than go off and explore it, we, the audience, were left behind on this Star Trek-themed soap opera. The Defiant was an attempt by the writers to correct that, by giving the DS9 crew a means to leave the station on a ship for wacky Star Trek adventures.
Yay!
This was originally envisioned as just a big shuttle. Okay, it didn't look like that. Okay, I couldn't resist. Sorry, it actually looked like this. But canonically, the viewers had just watched the Dominion destroy a Galaxy-class starship without much effort, and the idea that the Federation's frontline defense force would be headed by shuttlecraft was nonsensical.
Right.
So something with a little more teeth was proposed. This fit in with the writers who really wanted to have more intense action and battle scenes, so the Defiant's only real requirement was it be small, armed to the teeth, and look cool when it roared past the camera. Mission achieved.
Yay!
But when you read the behind-the-scenes stuff about the Defiant, everyone is just too excited at the idea of getting to design a ship with the cool factor that certain elements tend to get blurred. And as a result, we end up with a ship that is triumphantly badass in concept, but an utter disaster in any practical sense. It never needed to make sense. All it needed to do was make a bunch of nerds go woo.
Pretty much.
But the reality is, as I've spent the first half hour of this video trying to explain, you can't just have a combat ship, because a just combat ship cannot survive in the Star Trek universe. If you want to go around having wacky TV-friendly Star Trek adventures, then it needs to be a do-everything ship, like the Delta Flyer or the Sonic Screwdriver. It needs to be able to do whatever the plot requires of it, which in many cases means it has to be severely flawed. If the ship is too functional, if it's too practical, if it takes into account everything that could go wrong and plans for contingencies like actual naval vessels, then it becomes boring. If problems happen and they just fix it, where's the drama? Where's the excitement? Where's the show? So you need to send an inexperienced crew captained by a man who has never captained a starship before into the unknown to perform a delicate ambassadorial mission on board a prototype starship that is as deeply flawed as the whole planet itself. Because if the crew were competent, if the ship were perfect, then there's no adventure. And I, having sat here for an hour trying to explain why I hate this ship so much, don't know how to conclude a video where I have to admit the Defiant sucks, because Star Trek is a TV show.
Right.
So instead, I'll end on a final tangent, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a bit of a weird tangent, possibly a little bit of a hot take, assuming I have any credibility left in the Star Trek community and haven't already been smited down by the hand of Stuart Foley. I wish to propose a rather meek defense of the Borg Queen. I know. Hear me out, okay? The thing is, there's this thing in the world called military logic. Now, if you type military logic into Google, what you'll end up with is a lot of very complicated explanations that like using big words like critical, strategical conditioning, blah, 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 blah. Ignore it. Military logic is... well, okay, if you're playing a video game, say for example some World War II shooter, and you're advancing on this town, what is the first thing you do? Well, you take out your binoculars and you look at the top of the church spire. Why? Because there's a sniper up there.
Yeah.
There's always a sniper in the church tower.
Of course.
Because it's the best place for a sniper to be.
Yes.
And now that sniper is dead. But what if there's no sniper in the tower? What if the sniper is somewhere else? Well, that, in a nutshell, is military logic. If you are always logical, if you always do exactly what is the best and most logical thing you can do in any situation, you become predictable.
Yes.
And in war, if you become predictable, you die. So have you ever heard of the idiot at the table theory? Okay, this is a bit of a barman statement, but bear with me. The idea goes that top generals will invite a junior officer, typically of low potential with not much intelligence, to top-level briefs, where they discuss war plans and will be directly asked their opinion. Because if an idiot can work out your battle plan, you can bet your enemy has already worked out what it is and is preparing defenses against it. But on the other hand, sometimes their plan is just so stupid that it might actually work. Some people are too smart for their own good and will miss things that a stupid person will find obvious. It's a strange phenomenon that I'm sure has some clever names, but I don't know what it is. To the Borg, an entity of pure logic,
you see this happening a lot, and this is not the only place. When the engineers in certain fields, I'll just leave it like that because I don't really talk about it. In certain fields, the engineers will make blueprints, and then they're going to bring it to a person that used to do some stuff like I did. And that person is going to basically read that blueprint and the plans behind it and everything around it to absolute filth because it's not going to work.
The Queen is their idiot at the table. The problem the Borg have is when they encounter other races like humans, they're not dealing with an equally logical force. Humans are irrational, illogical, and prone to taking risks. They're driven by things like petty rivalries and revenge. These are concepts that are entirely alien to the Borg. Their purely logical hive mind cannot comprehend such things, so they
get where he's
basically need
going.
to create something which can. An illogical force feeding the logical force with the irrational and the emotional, in order to make those things both not only comprehensible, but potentially predictable. If you want a better example of this in sci-fi, this was a problem faced by the Daleks of the Doctor Who franchise during their war with the Malevians. Malevians? Villains?
Who knows?
Whatever. Two purely logical races driven by massive battle computers which could calculate billions of possibilities and create strategies, but only ever chose the option which guaranteed the most success, thus making their strategy effortlessly predictable to the opposing computer, resulting in a perfect stalemate. The Daleks solved this problem by bringing in Davros, their creator, a being that, though hyper-intelligent, was, by the Daleks' own definition, flawed, and thus could think in the ways that the Malevian battle computer could not comprehend, which gave them the edge. The Queen is basically that. Yeah, she's weird and horny, and it makes no sense why she would be the leader of a race devoted to logical perfection, but her flaws is what give the Borg the ability to think when faced by races who do not operate in the most logical way. My name's been LazerPig. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. If you'd like more information on why the Acclamator is the best ship in Star Wars, I will never make that video.
Okay.
Feel free to comment below, as it helps with my asylum application.
Yes! Warpugs. The Federation is crap at war. Like, I'm just throwing it out there. The Federation is utter hot dog water at war. They have been utter hot dog water at war for a very, very long time. If they were to actually arm their ships, because they've done it. They did it during the Dominion War after they had already lost such a huge significant portion of their fleet that, you know, it had become a thing. But if they actually armed their ships to the point they could be armed, there's really not that much that could stand against them. But it goes back to the same thing. Near the start of the Dominion War, the Federation had literally, you know, the Klingon Empire was allies. The Romulans were scared to breach the neutral zone. The Federation didn't have any enemies to challenge it. It didn't. And the Borg were just a distant threat. It didn't have any enemies to challenge it. And so the few enemies that could challenge it, you know, they, like he said, either negotiated with or just poo-pooed away. Then the Dominion. And the sheer fact the Federation took the amount of losses that it did is mind-numbing to me. Is mind-numbing. Because you would think at some point someone would sit there and be like, look, here's the deal. You have a ship called the Galaxy class. It's massive. It has a lot of power. Why don't we put a ton of DACA on it and send it off into war? But I'm just saying, Warpugs, LazerPig. All of LazerPig's links are going to be in the description down below. Please go check him out. The Defiant does suck, but not for the same reasons in my head that Defiant sucks for him. Defiant sucks as far as I'm concerned, simply put, because the Federation has and always will be utter garbage at war. Warpugs, I will catch you guys next time. Hit the like button, leave a comment down below. I'm finally going to go eat my muffins. Later, Warpugs.